Hey guys, today we're making Sunday dinner slash Mother's Day dinner since it's Mother's Day today. So happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful mommies out there. So I'm making myself dinner. I'm gonna be making meatloaf drenched in gravy, meatloaf with gravy, baked mac and cheese, and some buttered corn. So if you'd like to see the recipe for these, keep watching. Alright guys, so let's get started. So I'm gonna start by making the meatloaf first. So in this bowl right here I have my meatloaf, and I'm making a small meatloaf today because it's really only for me and my daughter. So I'm trying not to waste food. So my ground beef is in this bowl, and I'm gonna slice up this much of a red bell pepper and about half of an onion. I'm gonna dice them up and add it into the ground beef. Okay, so now I'm gonna add the peppers and onion into the ground beef, and I'm also gonna add a few sprigs of thyme. So I got my thyme leaves here, and I'm just gonna scrape them off like this. Alright, so next let's season up our mixture a little bit. So to season it, you guys, I'm gonna use some oregano, some parsley flakes. Now you could also use Italian seasoning if you have that. I'm gonna add some salt as well, onion powder and garlic powder, and lastly some black pepper. So I'm just adding some black pepper. I'm gonna add the rest of the seasonings I just showed you. Check the description box down below for measurements and all the ingredients I'm using. It's gonna be so good, and I feel like it's the perfect Mother's Day dinner. I could have gone to a restaurant and not cooked today, but I didn't feel like doing that, so I decided to make myself a delicious meal. So now I'm gonna add 2 eggs in here. And I'm adding some breadcrumbs. Here I'm using panko breadcrumbs, but any type of breadcrumb will work. Alright, now we gotta use our hands. We gotta get dirty and mix everything. You put on a glove if you'd like. Okay, and just mix everything together in the meatloaf. Okay, alright guys, so you want to get a dish that you're going to bake the meatloaf in. You could use a loaf pan if you'd like. And you're going to shape the mixture in the shape of a loaf, as best as you can if you're not using a loaf pan. Just like that. Alright, and we're gonna bake it. So I'm preheating my oven right now to 350 degrees, and I'm gonna bake it for about an hour, about 50 minutes to an hour. I'll let you guys know how long I left it and when I take it out. Okay, so I'm gonna put it in the oven. Okay guys, so now that our meatloaf is in the oven, we're going to start making the mac and cheese. So in this part right here I have some water, and I'm going to put it on the fire, and I'm going to let that come to a boil. Once it starts boiling, we're going to add in the pasta to cook for the mac and cheese. So this is the pasta that I'm using, Elbows macaroni. So these are the cheese that I'm using today. I hope you guys can see. So I'm using Monterey Jack cheese, sharp cheddar cheese, and mozzarella cheese. I'm using 3 blocks, and I'm gonna shred all of them up and mix them. Alright guys, so I'm finished shredding my cheese. Just blend these together, mix them up. Alright, and this is what I'm using to make my mac and cheese today. Half and half. You can use half and half or heavy cream. I use both, depending on what I have. Okay, so now I'm gonna dice up about 1/4 of an onion and about 3 cloves of garlic. So now my water is boiling for the pasta, so I'm gonna add a little bit of salt into the pot, and then I'm gonna add my pasta. Okay, follow the package directions and cook your pasta, then you're gonna drain the water out. So let's make the sauce for the mac and cheese. So I'm adding some butter in the pan, and I'm gonna add in the minced garlic and diced onion. Let that cook for about 3 minutes or so until the onions soften and it starts to caramelize just a little. Alright guys, so now I'm gonna add in 2 tablespoons of flour, because I added in 2 tablespoons of butter, and you want to add equal amounts of butter and flour, okay, because we're making a roux. And just mix the flour into the onion and butter and garlic mixture, and you want this to cook for about 2 minutes or so, 1 to 2 minutes. Let the flour cook a little. So now I'm going to pour in my half and half. Whisk the flour mixture into the half and half until it's well blended, okay? And it's gonna start getting thick on you, and that's what you want. And while it's heating up, we're gonna start adding in the cheese. So add in the cheese, and just remember with the cheese, leave some remaining back for on top of your mac and cheese, and then you're gonna mix the cheese into the cream sauce until it's well blended. But yeah, reserve about 1 to 2 cups of cheese on top of the mac and cheese. And what I do when I'm making my sauce really is I add as much as it'll hold. You don't want to add too much because you don't want the sauce to be too thick, but you want it to be well blended and creamy. So just add it about a cup at a time, as much as the sauce will hold without making it too thick. And then the rest you could add it straight into the macaroni if the sauce can't hold all of it. Okay guys, so in this bowl I have the cheese that's left over. I took out some of the cheese, about a cup to 2 cups, and that's gonna be for on top of my mac and cheese. So you want no reserve, about 1 to 2 cups of cheese. And I just added my cooked macaroni to the bowl, and now I'm gonna season it up a little. And I'm seasoning the macaroni with some onion powder, garlic powder, a little bit of salt, and some freshly ground black pepper. Mix the seasoning into the macaroni really well, and then I'm gonna add in the cheese sauce we just made. So I'm gonna add the cheese sauce, and I'm gonna mix it until it's nice and creamy and well blended together. Next, I'm getting the dish I'm gonna be baking my mac and cheese in, and I'm gonna pour the mac and cheese into the dish. Use the pot spoon to level the top of the mac and cheese, and then you're gonna sprinkle the top with the remaining cheese. Okay, so add a good even layer on top of your mac and cheese. After you add the cheese on top, what I like to do is add a sprinkle of fresh parsley chopped up. Try to use fresh parsley because it'll make the dish more vibrant. The dried ones look, dried out and all of that. So try to get fresh parsley, chop it up, and just sprinkle some on top of your baked mac and cheese. And then preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and you're going to put the mac and cheese into the oven and bake it for about 20 minutes until the top is golden brown and bubbly. Alright guys, so now I'm going to start making the gravy for the meatloaf. So in my pot I added a few tablespoons of butter, and I'm going to let that melt, and then I'm going to add in a few tablespoons of flour. So here you want to use equal amounts of butter and flour, okay, because we're going to make a roux. And you're going to mix the flour into the butter and let that cook for about 2 minutes or so. You want the flour to cook a little. Alright, so let it cook until it turns a blondish color. So these are the main ingredients I'm using to make my gravy. I'm using Lipton beefy onion soup mix. I'm going to be using some ketchup, and then I'm using chicken broth because that's what I had on hand, but if you can get beef broth, even better. Okay, so after the 2 minutes I'm going to add in my broth, and you're going to use a whisk to whisk that until it's well blended. And then I'm gonna go in and add the Lipton beefy onion soup mix packet and then the ketchup. Mix that into the gravy really well until it's well blended, and then I'm gonna season up the gravy a little bit with some black pepper, a little bit of salt, some onion powder, garlic powder, and also I'm gonna add a little bit of fresh thyme leaves. I'm just gonna scrape it off the stem and add it into my gravy. So make sure you taste the gravy before you add the salt, especially because you know the broth has salt in it. You don't want to over salt your gravy. All right, and then season your gravy to your liking. All right, and once you add all of those ingredients, give the gravy one more mix, and then you're gonna let it come to a slight boil. Once it starts to boil, you're gonna turn the heat down and let it simmer for about 5 minutes or so that the gravy can thicken up. Okay, so after 5 minutes and the gravy has thickened a little, you can turn off the stove. Alright guys, so it's been about 55 minutes and I'm taking out the meatloaf from the oven, and I'm gonna take the gravy we just made and I'm gonna pour it all over my meatloaf. Okay, so fully coat the meatloaf with the gravy, add some in the sides of the pan as well, and then you can take a spoon and just baste the top of the meatloaf with that delicious gravy we just made. All right, you can also reserve some of the gravy and set it aside so that after the meatloaf is finished cooking, you have some, like, you have extra gravy on the side to go with the meal. Okay, so next I'm going to place the meatloaf back into the oven at the same 350 degrees for about 15 to 20 more minutes until it's fully cooked and nicely glazed with that delicious gravy we just added. Okay guys, so my mac and cheese is finished baking, and here it is. It looks so delicious, golden brown and bubbly on the top. All right, so I'm gonna set that aside and let's make some buttered corn to go with our meal. So I got my pot over medium heat and I'm gonna add in some butter. Next I'm gonna add in 1 can of corn kernels, golden corn. Okay, so add in the corn and you're gonna mix it in with the butter. So I'm gonna season it up a little bit with salt, black pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. All right, and just mix the seasoning in with the corn. And the last thing I'm gonna add to it is just a little bit of fresh parsley chopped up, and then just let that cook for about 3 minutes or so. You want the corn to be fully coated with the butter, and once it's warmed and mixed thoroughly, that is it for this dish, you guys. So simple. And my Sunday dinner is ready, you guys. So I got my meatloaf looking absolutely delicious. Okay. Oh my god, this looks so good. This looks so good, you guys. Look at that. And here's the corn. And that is it, you guys. Alright, y'all. So let's slice the meatloaf. So if you want, you could pour some of the remaining sauce on top of it like that and serve it like this. Completely drenched in gravy. So good, you guys, I promise you. Alright. So now you guys can see me make myself a plate. So I'm gonna add some of my baked mac and cheese. Look at that mac and cheese, so cheesy and looking delicious. And then I'm gonna add 2 slices of the meatloaf with the gravy and some of my corn, and that is it, you guys, for my dinner today. It was absolutely delicious. So I hope you guys enjoyed these recipes and this video. Thank you guys so much for supporting my channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.